There's been many an occasion when an Indian American Desi CEO has turned around a struggling Silicon Valley giant. Can Rishi Sunak do the same to an island nation? Can he bring the United Kingdom back on a path of stability and growth, setting the way for many more leaders of Indian origin to do well as chief executives of their country globally? Joining me on the Newstrack, I want to welcome first Kishwar Desai, author and columnist. Alex Dean is a political commentator, consultant, not very happy with Rishi Sunak, and we'll soon find out why. This has also led to a big celebration in India about the fact that he is the first Hindu Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and the Indian right is jubilant. Rajat Sethi joins us to tell us why, and Zainab Sikandar is of the view there's really no big deal because this is happening in the UK with very little material significance for India. So let's get started, and I want to ask Kishwar Desai first about her sense of how Rishi Sunak is likely to fare as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Much more interest in Sunak because of his Indian origin, but also he comes into bat at a time when the pitch is very unfriendly at the Downing Street and the ball is swinging and seaming in all directions.
Thank you, Rahul. Firstly, of course, I want to congratulate Rishi because I think he's had a very tough battle. He went through many rounds earlier with Liz Truss, and then he had not won at that time, but then finally his party literally rallied around him. And that's a very big deal for any Indian origin MP or any colored MP, as they would say, a man of color, that so many people rallied around him and asked him to step into the void that was left by Liz Truss. So definitely it is a very meaningful day for everybody.
But most of his critics in the UK are saying he's unelected, that he's really been chosen by his party MPs. It's not as if the people of Britain have elected a brown man to be their Prime Minister.
You know what? He is an elected MP. He is an elected member of parliament. And as you know, it is only amongst the elected member of parliaments that the leader is chosen. And it is every time that the party chooses the leader. It is not that, of course, very often the whole party or the whole election is held under different leaders. But at the same time, when there is an election like this, and it is a constitutional function that has happened, then Rishi has been very rightly elected. So I would say that these are people who are trying to say, call for a general election. This is obviously the job of the opposition to destabilize the government, and naturally they're going to say this. It is also, Rahul, a very difficult time in the UK. You see this everywhere. I have never seen this kind of levels of poverty, this kinds of levels of struggle that people are facing in their day-to-day lives. It does not at times seem like a country which is developed. At times the stories which are coming out in the papers and the media make it sound like a developing nation. But I know that the fundamentals are strong. Rishi is a very smart guy. He comes with this background of having done extremely well as the Chancellor, and therefore he has all the experience required to make this, to turn this around and to make UK strong again. And that is what we're all hoping for.
Lord Rami Ranger joins us, member of the House of the Lords in the United Kingdom. Lord Ranger, welcome. Huge interest in India in Rishi Sunak and whether he can turn around the struggling fortunes of Great Britain. We've seen many an Indian CEO do this in Silicon Valley, turn around companies like Microsoft, which are struggling after their founder kind of left them in a state where they were struggling to grow. Can Rishi Sunak do the same for the United Kingdom in your view, and if so, why?
100%. I'll tell you why. First of all, Rishi is going to work as a team. He's going to take into account the advice from the Bank of England, the economist. He's not going to make any economic decision as did Liz Truss, and you know what happened. The second one, Rishi is not going to appoint his friends or someone who ticked the right box into his cabinet. He's going to unite the party and attract the talent. Yes? So
But
number
running a
three,
hedge fund and running the economy is very different from running a country, which is a very political job. He's good at finance, no doubt about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be able to run a complex country like the United Kingdom.
look, I started businesses in many fields and we changed businesses. Once you can run a shoe shop, you can also run a vegetable shop. It's the philosophy of running a successful business that matters. As a chancellor, your previous caller alluded that as a chancellor, he showed empathy
You know,
to the
I
working
hate to
class
point out, but
people.
they said the same about Trump when he took over in the United States, saying that he's a successful businessman. We saw what he did. Of course, Sunak is much smarter intellectually, but just because you run a successful business doesn't necessarily mean that you can govern successfully.
No, all fingers are not equal. Why are you comparing Trump to Rishi Sunak?
I'm
Look at
not. I'm
his
just giving you
record.
that example
He's
about
a,
businessmen
no,
running
no, no.
countries.
That's a very, with respect. If you allow me to speak,
Yes,
otherwise
sir,
you
go on.
carry on speaking. Carry on speaking yourself. So Trump is a very bad example. He's a playboy. He was a ruthless businessman. I don't know how many bankruptcy he committed before he reached to that level. So Rishi is a wholesome family man, God-fearing man, very transparent, very ethical person. He resigned because he was not going to have a prime minister breaking law, right and temper, and then going to the parliament and lying that he wasn't in the party, then he was in the party, then he didn't think it was a party, he was a working, all this nonsense. So therefore, he was being a conscious, he took a very big gamble, very big risk, but it was for his conscience. He decided political career is not as important as the running the ethical business or the ethical government was. So look at that, he's been vindicated, and all the policies which he advocated during the last campaign with Liz Truss, yes, have come true. And Liz Truss resigned because she admitted the promises, the inducements she gave to attract votes have not come to fruition. She has not been able to deliver the manifest which she promised. So therefore, Rishi is a pragmatic. As a chancellor, he spent billions of pounds to stabilize the economy. He saved a lot of jobs. He lost sort of small businesses. And the result is, after pandemic, we are not in worse position as many other countries we are. So
Okay,
therefore,
Alex Dean, Lord Rami Ranger explaining why Sunak will be successful as Prime Minister. He's run hedge funds and the economy well. What are your key concerns? What do you think Rishi could get wrong and why?
He's now our Prime Minister. And my party, the Conservative Party, which has torn apart 3 Prime Ministers in a row and shown complete breakdown in discipline, has got to unite around our new Prime Minister. So I'm quite the reverse of the way that you've set this conversation up, I'm afraid. I really hope that he succeeds. And on the point that you have been canvassing about whether it matters that he's an Indian, I'm afraid that, or of Indian background, one of your other guests is rather of my position. I think it's no big deal. In the UK, it doesn't really matter.
He hasn't really been elected by the voters directly. When there is an election, do you think the color of his skin or his Indian origins will be held against him by voters?
No, of course I don't. Our last 4 chancellors of the Exchequer have been Sajid Javid, Nadeem Zahawi, Kwasi Kwarteng and Rishi Sunak. I mean, this is not a country that is of a racist sort of perspective. In fact, it's an incredibly diverse cabinet that we have in the UK. And my point would be that the people who have occupied those roles and now Prime Minister, the most important political office in our country, have got there on merit. One of my fellow panelists has already explained to you that we live in a parliamentary democracy, not a presidential system. We vote for a party, and if the leader of that party changes, a new person takes over. What's happened here is completely right and proper, that we lost a Prime Minister and a new one takes her place.
Okay, Rajat Sethi, you're hearing from the UK, guest after guest saying this is really no big deal. Though I don't know why the Hindu right or the Indian right is celebrating, because this is Britain. Yes, he's a God-fearing Hindu, but he's British. His Indian origins are very distant. He was born in the UK. His parents were originally in East Africa. Pakistan is claiming that his parents actually come from Gujranwala, and therefore his Indian roots are at best distant. Therefore, this is hardly a victory for India. In fact, the likes of Mehbooba Mufti saying, can a Muslim be Prime Minister of India?
Well, Rahul, if we limit this entire question to a nation state, of course, all your arguments that you put forth might sound reasonable, but this is this is a deeper, it carries some deeper connotations. It carries connotations on our civilizational values, which sees echoes around the world now. Indian diaspora is strong enough, not just in the UK, but in the other important countries as well. And it is the overall values, the civilizational ethos that we carry proudly is what makes us feel proud. And there is nothing wrong with it. There were these bunch of liberals who when Rishi went and carried out with his practices, his religious beliefs, they mocked at him that he's a cow worshipping, piss drinking leader of the Tories. Then nobody came out and questioned that why are some of these liberals, both in India and outside, were trying to belittle his religious beliefs. And I think as a leader, he needs to grow up. There are challenges before the UK. We know that the economic condition that Truss pushed the nation into, which made the pound, which is such a strong currency, global reserve, into turmoil, that could be avoided. So the other couple of things which UK, which we had never imagined, that they would be sympathizers of colonialism, rising up and reaching to the level where Suella Braverman reached to the Home Secretary level, that she would be coming in and justifying colonialism. That is something which largely disturbed the Indian diaspora as well as the Indian nation at large. There were also the riots which happened in Leicester, which were deeply disturbing. They were largely against Hindus. And I think what needs to be expected from him, rationally speaking, I mean, of course, he's a British all in, and we should not even be super excited about his credentials around working for the interests of Britain. But what we are deeply concerned is that the Hindus who are residing there and are largely a peaceful community should not be attacked through mob violence, which we had observed in Leicester and in Birmingham. That is something that is the least bit of expectation.
Zainab Sikandar, there is a moment here. It happened on the day of Diwali, just a day after India had beaten Pakistan in the most unbelievable match at the World Cup. A Hindu believer, cow worshipper, becoming Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Of course, he's Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, there's no doubt about it, and he's not really Indian by any stretch of imagination. But they're saying, hey, they like the fact that Rishi Sunak is Prime Minister of Britain, and they identify with this man who in some ways is from the subcontinent, and now there is Rishi Raj in the United Kingdom.
No, it is almost poetic, and that too, him taking office, on the, day of Diwali. And it's a proud moment, and you can't deny that culturally and traditionally and according to his religion, he is deeply connected to India. He happens to be a Hindu. And, if you even look at his political standing in the UK, he comes from the Conservative Party. So even in that sort of context, Rishi does fit the bill. But when it comes to saying, will he do anything for India? I think as an Indian, I will do a disservice to Rishi Sunak by putting him under the scanner, putting him under the microscope, and giving air to his critics who are anyway of the view that his wife doesn't have, she's not a British national, she still holds an Indian passport, and the fact that they are from a super rich Indian family. So at the risk of putting him under the scanner, of showing favoritism either to his subordinates who come from an Indian origin or Indian descent, or to the country itself, I think we should speak in this line, because he is a through and through British national. I mean, you look at his spotless career, and even his education, he has really made the country that he belongs to, which is Britain, proud. So it's a bit unfair that we only harp on his Indian origin. He's way more than that. And when it comes to what the Indian side is talking, again, pandering to the whole Hindu, Muslim, whether a Muslim can become, a prime minister in India, I think India needs to take a huge lesson. In fact, out of, the UK, we can't deny UK has had a very racist past. And of course, their colonial history is deeply entrenched in racism. But they've come a long way, and they are really over it. And I think India has to take a leaf out of that book of UK and not harp so much upon identity, and give more credit to merit. And I think Rishi Sunak today is the Prime Minister of the UK.
That's one perspective, but the fact also is they tried all other options. It's not as if Rishi Sunak was the first choice. They got Liz Truss in, she messed it up in the way that Rishi Sunak said she would. finally they had to get the Desi in to do the cleaning up because they couldn't get Liz Truss to do the job that she was chosen to by her party, and she goofed it up royally. If it was just about competence, Sunak would have beaten Truss. So it wasn't just about competence. There are other aspects of race and identity as well. His record suggests he's competent. He'll have to go out and prove it as Prime Minister, but it isn't about competence alone. Otherwise, Sunak would have had this job before Truss.
It was a very democratic election. It had been first given to the party members. They, of course, were in favor of Rishi stepping in. Possibly they knew him better. He is still, at that point, before he went in for the hustings, he was still not a very well-known MP, Member of Parliament. He was definitely known as a Chancellor who had done extremely well under Boris Johnson during the COVID time. And he had helped a lot of people through furlough and so on. So there was a lot of support for him. But at the time when he went out to the Conservative members were obviously, because perhaps they knew about Liz Truss, who was also not a small player. She was the Foreign Secretary. They knew about her and they chose her. Look, it is in every party's right to choose the leader that they want. So it wasn't a question of being competent or incompetent. The issues that were raised, certainly there were two different sets of solutions which were presented to the people. They chose the solution that Liz Truss presented, and it turned out to be not a favorable one at all. So in any case, this is a democracy and people can select the wrong leaders. It happens all the time. The other thing I want to say, Rahul, is about him being a Hindu. We have had many Hindus leading, albeit not such very, big nations like the UK, but in other places like Mauritius and other areas, there have been Hindu leaders, there have been Hindu prime ministers, and this is religion should always be left as a personal choice. It is something that leader professes, and I think we should leave it at that rather than making it into that, now as though, a great wave of Hinduism is taking place in the UK. That is completely wrong. This is Rishi's personal religion. We should leave him to practice whatever he wants to practice. And that is what we should all appreciate and enjoy, that this is a diverse country. It's a multicultural country. Anyone can choose whatever religion. As a previous speaker said, there was Sajid Javed, who is of Pakistani origin. He was also the chancellor. Well, that's great. It just shows us that this nation has grown up, and other nations should also grow up and allow people from diverse backgrounds to take a shot at the top job. And that is what Rishi has done. And that is what we should look forward to. Now, he should find a good solution for the mess that the UK is in today. And I think that will be what will be really appreciated by everybody in the UK, regardless of what religion or background we come from.
Lord Rami Ranger, how do you think Rishi is likely to fare when it comes to relations with India? We've seen sometimes that leaders from Indian origin have tended to be rather critical towards India, possibly in an attempt to show, to basically show to their voter base that the United States or wherever else is where their loyalties really lie. Is that a burden that Rishi could carry with him, or do you think things like, take for example the free trade agreement which has been pending, which had to be, before it was torpedoed, wrapped up before Diwali, would actually get expedited because you've got a man who understands the significance of India-UK ties?
I think there are two things you have to understand. First thing first, Rishi is not a prime minister because he's a Hindu. He is prime minister because he has tremendous qualities and merit. He has contested twice to be where he is today. As an immigrant, we have to work hard. We have to go the extra mile, which Rishi has done. He was tried, tested by so many ways to come to conclusion, his colleague, that he's the right man for the job. So number one. Number two, when you help others, you also help yourself. By helping India, he will also help Britain, because Britain has to look outward. It cannot just survive on its own. It has to build relationship, connection with countries which share its values. Secular, democratic country with the rule of law at the heart of their governance. We are not like India is not like China, where you have to watch your back and front when you do trade business with them. So by helping India he will also help his country, Great Britain, where I live, my future, my children live, and our destiny lies. So by helping others is not a bad thing. And Indian economy is number fifth or sixth in the world, and the free trade agreement will be the mother of all free trade agreement between number fifth and sixth economy. And look at the size of India's market. It's growing at the rate of 6 to 7%, which can pull British economy from its sluggish growth. So therefore, by helping others, by uniting with people, you become a credible force. You know, I have built up business in 130 countries through, I have no money, no to buy companies or to acquire anything. I built up strategic alliance in countries, which is the best way to go forward when we are not able to win alone. So India is the largest buyer of defense equipment. India can provide Britain the scale of manufacturing like we did for the COVID vaccination in a pharmaceutical industry. JCB, earth moving equipment, have two factories, one in Rajasthan, one in Gujarat, exporting to 90 countries. The only way Britain can compete with China is by having strategic alliance with a country like India, where there is a very loyal and skilled labor force in abundance and cost you fraction of what it costs the United Kingdom. If they don't help India, their defense industry is contracting and it might disappear. But by joining hands with India, their defense industry can get a shot in the arm because India needs everything, because India has got two hostile neighbors, communist and religious state, on one side communist, one side religious state. So therefore, India has to have relationship with the West. The West have always backed the wrong people in the past, and thanks to Modi ji's pragmatic leadership, where he's keeping relationship with Russia and keeping relationship with America, you cannot put all your egg in one basket. The best thing is you have to look after your own interest and never leave your interest to somebody else. Yes, make it India is the best policy. With Israel, we are working. Now we can work with United Kingdom. You know, the relationship has changed. Britain was a occupying force in India. We were the colony. Today, relationship is equal. We are not even equal. We are bigger. We are 1.4 billion people. There are 65 million people. Look at our size of the economy. So therefore, we are now going ahead as equal partner who need each other to fight most.
Alex Dean, in your view, how are relations between India and the United Kingdom likely to fare under Sunak?
Well, I think that it's true to say that people who have a particular affinity with a place are more likely to think of them first when they consider where to go next with trade arrangements. And there's no secret about the fact that trade between a post-Brexit independent and sovereign United Kingdom and India has stuttered. It has not moved ahead as quickly as we might have hoped, but I hope that it will do under Rishi Sunak as our new Prime Minister. But I just wanted to return to one point that you were discussing with my fellow panelists, because it seems to me quite important that Rishi Sunak is in the position he's in on merit. He has achieved the position that he is in because of his own abilities and his own activities as a politician, rather than about his background or his gender or his ethnicity. Disagreements in my party between him and Liz Truss weren't about the fact that she was of one faith or he was another. People's religions are, as my fellow panelists have pointed out, their own business in our country, and we don't tend to discuss them very much. The disagreements in the UK were about matters to do with economics and whether we should tax more and spend more, whether we should cut government spending and cut taxes. Those are the kinds of issues that really led to Liz Truss being elected and then to Rishi Sunak being elected. And I would just make the point that it's the Conservative Party which elects people on merit and chooses them on merit that's produced 3 female prime ministers and now our first ethnic minority prime minister in the modern age, rather than the Labour Party, which produces people on selections processes which are biased according to their backgrounds. I think it's best to choose your candidates on merit, and I think that Rishi Sunak becoming our prime minister from the Conservative Party demonstrates that.